Hello everybody! This video is for Monday, November 16th, our first day back locked down and out of school. So today, after hopefully you took attendance with me on Zoom, we will be taking notes over what is known as the Middle Ages, the Dark Ages, or medieval times. So I will put my PowerPoint up and I will talk through this. If you have any questions, please email me them or ask me during tomorrow's Zoom meeting. So this isn't supposed to be just a no questions type of thing. So please record any questions you have, write them on the side of your notebook, and I will do my best to answer them tomorrow or today when you email me. So anyway, the nice part of doing notes this way is if I'm going too fast for you to write them down and you want to write every word down, I know some of you like to do that, you can just pause this video like you would any other video and take a little bit longer to write everything down. For those of you that write things faster or shorthand stuff, you'll probably like this because we'll move a little faster. So here it goes. Note 16, European Middle Ages. I will use the term Middle Ages, Dark Ages, Medieval Era. They are all completely interchangeable, and what they primarily mean is in the West, Europe grew weak and fell into this era from about 500 to 1300. This does not apply to Asia, to Africa for the most part, and to kind of the Middle East. This is strictly a European Middle Ages, and that's obviously very important. We talked all last week about the strength and the power of the Islamic Empire, and that started in about 650. So Europe falls, and Asia, the Middle East, actually grows significantly in strength. So will Africa. So as far as these Dark Ages are concerned, this really is a European problem. And kind of what happens here. When we say weak, we mean weak on this. Barbarian kingdoms will come, they'll conquer this western part of the Roman Empire. When this happens, there's almost constant warfare across Europe, and you break into these different kingdoms. Probably the most famous and the most powerful will be the Kingdom of the Franks. However, so will be like the Kingdom of the Visigoths, as well, the Kingdom of the Vandals, and it's not united. There's not some sort of central power. So warfare is going to disrupt all trade. Because trade is disrupted, European cities will fall. And instead of people living in these huge, big, beautiful cities like Rome, they're going to go move to very rural areas, which will not be good at all for trade, for the economy, for the spread of ideas, for the spread of learning. It won't go well. I know we talked earlier during Rome about why does the Colosseum look almost unfinished? Well, it looks unfinished because during this Dark Ages, people went and they took materials from the Colosseum and brought them to these rural areas. Along with the Dark Ages is a complete decline in literacy. People who a generation before were completely literate, capable of reading and writing, that falls off. That declines completely. Most people now cannot read or write. All of that Greco-Roman culture, completely forgotten. The architecture, for the most part, some of it will stay. That art, the philosophy, the religion is all going to change a little bit. The Greco-Roman world is mainly forgotten. The next key disruption that will have long-lasting implications. Well, when it was under the Roman Empire, everybody spoke Latin. And when everyone speaks the same language, it's a whole lot easier to communicate, right? So what then happens is these languages break apart. And now there's Spanish, French, Italian. Depending on where you live, you're going to speak a very different language. It's very difficult to keep things united when that's the case. All right. During these early Middle Ages, the Germanic kingdoms are also converting to Christianity. Towards the end of the Roman Empire, Constantine gets baptized. Rome becomes a Christian empire. That then, towards the fall of Rome, was becoming even more and more the case. So once it falls and we start this Dark Ages, Christianity is really the only common thread between all of these different kingdoms. Again, they don't speak the same language. They don't have the same rulers. They don't have anything really connecting them. In a lot of cases, these different kingdoms won't even trade. But what is common throughout is that the Catholic Pope is a common person who is viewed very, very highly. We'll actually look at a few pictures where the Pope crowns the kings. So the difference here is, and now the Catholic Pope really only weighs in on religious issues. He's considered the guy for religious issues in Catholicism. But at this time, they're also going to be ruling on what's called secular or non-religious issues. So who's going to fix roads? Who's going to aid with the poor? Who's going to help these Christian kings expand their power? A lot of times it's going to be the Catholic Pope. The Catholic Pope is going to gain in power during the Dark Ages. Christianity is going to gain in power. Cathedrals, churches, religion in general, Christianity will be a dominant force at this time. So, how do people live? Well, we already said they're going to go and they're going to move to these rural areas. When they do that, a system called feudalism, or the feudal system, is what starts. And more than anything, this is a protection idea. It's based on land and loyalty in exchange for protection. So how this kind of works is if you're at the top of our social hierarchy here, so you're, say, a king, lord, or a lesser lord, which is known as a vassal, all the same group. Kings and lords give land and protection to knights and peasants. So the kings and the lords are going to give their land and protection to knights and servants. Well, knights and servants aren't going to do it for nothing, or the kings and the lords aren't going to do that for nothing. So in return, the knights and the peasants give their military service, give their labor, and give their loyalty to the kings and the lords. So there's this like feedback system. The kings and the lords need things, right? You can't be a king just sitting in your castle and think nothing bad's going to ever happen. So they give these knights and these peasants land and protection. Here's your acre of land to farm to some peasant. And in return, that peasant is going to give their labor and loyalty to that king. The same thing will work the other way around. So the lord is going to give some land and protection to the knights, and in return, the knights are going to fight in their military. It's this exchange. and it really, really relies on loyalty and promises. A lot of peasants, a lot of knights will not really leave that land that they're born on. This is not a huge time for travel. So landowning lords offer land to knights in exchange for their loyalty and promise to protect the lord's land. This feudal system diagram, I think, is very, very helpful for understanding kind of who's giving what. Moving right along, you definitely do not need to write these first two bullet points. I would never ask you that. But knights are the coolest part. So, kind of similar to ancient Sparta. At 7, if you're going to become a knight, you would be sent to a different castle where you are going to then work for a lord. And that lord is going to start to teach you how to be a knight. So you would do sword fighting. You would learn kind of discipline. You would learn everything, start to learn like how to be a knight. By the time you're 14, you officially become what's called a squire, and you act as a servant to a knight. You take care of the knight's armor, their weapons, you help them out. And then eventually, once you prove yourself, you would become a knight in your own right. During all of this, you follow what is called the Code of Chivalry. You might have heard the term chivalry before, but it is the code that all knights live by, and it starts during the Dark Ages. So you're expected to be brave, to be loyal, to be true to your word, and this idea of protecting women who are seen as weaker is all part of being a knight and part of the Code of Chivalry. Alright. Lords build castles to protect their territory from invasion. So this is going to have a lot of stuff going on in a castle. A lot of times there's going to be a moat around it with a drawbridge, just in a way like the movies. There's going to be all sorts of different towers that lookouts and archers would be able to be in. There's going to be an armory, so a place to stockpile any and all weapons. There's going to be a place for different soldiers and knights to live. There's going to be a stockpile of food along with likely a garden. This is going to be the age of siege warfare, where there's going to be people coming to attack your castle, and you might need to be able to hang out in your castle for weeks or months at a time as well. There's going to definitely be a chapel, because again, Christianity is huge at this time. And then there's going to be kind of the more Disney idea of a castle, where there's going to be a place for the king and queen to really live. Disney, though, has way romanticized the castle in a lot of ways. It really was this just like gross stone building that didn't have any windows and was kind of gross to be in. What you have going on here is how this idea of siege warfare would happen. Siege warfare is when you go and attack some sort of compound like a castle and try to get into it. So one of the big innovations of the Dark Ages, we'll call it an innovation, is the trebuchet. Very, very similar to a catapult, but instead you have a counterweight, and whatever you are firing is going to be on some sort of rope being held by a basket. That gives you an extra whip effect, and having the counterweight gives you more leverage to fire things further and better. You're also going to start to have things like a battering ram to get into these doors. Not an easy task, though. Some of these walls, especially in the later Dark Ages, are going to be several feet deep. So battering rams will be used to try to, again, break in to get there. Siege towers will be built, basically a giant laddered platform, so that you can get over the walls, support soldiers and their weapons. Okay. The feudal system relies also on this idea of a manor. So a manor's going to have a few things going on. One thing is you're going to have the manor house. This is where the lord lives. Again, it goes king, lord. There's a lot of lords living in different places of the kingdom. So they're going to have their manor house or a lord's house. Think of it like a tiny castle. Next, you're definitely going to have a church. Religion is huge. In fact, the church alone is going to own a third of the land in Europe, so there's going to be a church. 3 here is a mill, something to process whatever grains they have, and it's going to be located on 4, which is some sort of mill pond, and then river or stream. All manors are located on water, just like our river valley civilizations. You're then going to have some village. That's mainly going to be where the peasants live. They will have some little bits of land to themselves, but mainly they're going to be working in other fields. But they will have a little bit of land to themselves. Again, that goes with the feudal system. The Lord is giving them a tiny bit of land for themselves. 6, you're going to have some communal pasture. This will be allowed to be used by those peasants, those farmers. And then you're going to have more kind of major non-communal pasture land. There'll also be a few places that are woods all around that can be used for different building materials to help. And then obviously all these fields are going to be worked for the Lord. Thing with the manor. The Lord's land was called a manor. During the Middle Ages, the manor system was the way in which people survived. This is a completely self-sufficient area. That means they don't need to trade. Everything they need can be produced on the manor. In exchange for peasants repaid the Lord by working his land and providing a portion of the food they produce. It's almost like a contract that you can never get out of. It's this agreement that is being used to keep people in this sort of system. This is a self-sufficient system. They don't need to go and do all sorts of trading with other groups and other people. Alrighty, here's another image, right? You see the church, peasants' houses, a mill, a manor house, kind of with the moat around it, and the wall reminds you of a tiny castle. So very, very common looking manor. Here's some pictures of some larger manor houses / castles. Again, absolutely huge, huge walls, built with lots of different lookout towers. That will be very, very important, that they're able to see for long distances on who's coming. So church, manor house, that's a priest's house, very common in Catholicism. Serfs' houses, mill, fields, woodland. Very, very common system that they have. Manors are completely self-sufficient. Everything you need is produced on the manor. So I didn't talk about this before, but for instance, there's going to be a blacksmith. Somebody is going to specifically be a part of making and nails, whatever else, horseshoes and stuff. There's going to be the Lord's oven, so somebody that's able to cook for the Lord. but everything else is self-sufficient, right? They're going to make their own clothes. They're going to not really engage in all of that trade that we've talked about before, and that trade that the Islamic Empire is getting rich off of. So, peasant life is hard. They paid taxes to use the Lord's mill. They had to get permission to get married. Their life expectancy was only about 35. They have no real way to move up in social status. If you're a peasant, you're gonna be a peasant until the day you die. There's not going to be the huge surplus of food we've talked about before. They just aren't farming enough land, and for that to really happen, their diets are going to be pretty poor. It's really just going to be grain, so that leads to that even worse life expectancy of only 35 years. The Lord really is in full control of your life. That they are going to make every single decision for you. The little money you do have will be taxed. You will be forced to pay taxes, not only to use the Lord's mill, but to the church. You'll be still tithing 10% of that, at least, to pay for the different churches, cathedrals. Alrighty. So, I will link this video for you to watch. It's a crash course on the Dark Ages. Again, if you have any questions, please send me an email. Be ready to ask at tomorrow's Zoom meeting. Thanks.